One of the biggest tragedies that I have observed in my experience is watching the wound someone's experience become an adaptation for their identity. This is actually the most difficult developmental tension in the human experience. It is the difference between protecting yourself from pain and imprisoning yourself to the very pain that is shaping your identity. And this is often where people get stuck. So if you find yourself in a loop, pay attention. God designed our brain to be just this amazing survival mechanism, and that's what it's done. It helps us to survive, not thrive. Anyway, as the brain experiences certain things, as we live throughout our lives, our brain adapts to what we experience. So the adaptations are normal, right? And that's why the response that we have to these maybe traumatic experiences, maybe betrayal, maybe a relationship ended, whatever the life experience or event was, whatever the adaptation or the response to it, it made sense in the moment. But the problem comes when we over-identify with it over a period of time, and not only does it stay there, but it becomes our identity. So we identify as it instead of it being a separate event that happened to us. So if someone was used, overlooked, emotionally extracted from, betrayed, abandoned, parentified, or grew up completely unseen, of course, parts of you learn to move throughout the world with caution. So, of course, some of your capacities close down. The nervous system knows how to respond in different situations to prevent further harm. Remember, I told you the brain is a survival tool. But eventually life asks us a deeper question. As we continue to live and have more experiences, life is going to get real. And it's going to ask us this question. Will you continue, or will you become organized around your wound, or will you become organized around your potential? They're not the same thing. And the trap is when pain makes a person over-identify with what happened to them. So instead of, going through a situation where you have been used or extracted from, the experience is I learned exploitation, which becomes any need directed towards me is exploitation. So you see how this shifts. Another example is, if you were in an environment or were raised unseen, it becomes visibility is dangerous. And this is why some of you all have a challenge with being seen. You have a fear of being seen or even perceived. Another example, instead of I was used for my gifts, it becomes my gifts are liabilities. So whereas some of you who were used based on your creativity or your skill or your gifts or, something that you have that's amazing about you, you internalize that and it becomes, a subconscious belief that your skills are a liability. So some of you aren't even using your skills right now because of that subconscious belief. And so the shift of, over identifying with the wound is very profound because the wound is no longer an experience being processed outside of you or separate from you. It actually becomes the lens interpreting your reality. It becomes a narrative, or as the Bible calls it, a stronghold. Some people unintentionally become what disappointed them. So not because you're evil or you're fake, but because unprocessed pains tends to swing people into overcorrection. An example of this would be in Matthew 18, where it's the parable of the unforgiving servant, and he has a debt. His debt gets relieved. He goes out. He sees someone who has a smaller debt than he had previously owed to the king, and he hems him up. The king finds out about it. He jails him and his family, and now he's being tormented, right? And so it's basically that the very thing that offended you, you go out and do, and it becomes a thing that torments you. So you basically become what you didn't forgive. And so that shows up in the scripture, but it also shows up in psychology. So a person who is abandoned might become emotionally unavailable. That's how that looks. A person who is controlled might become controlling. A person who is unseen may truly refuse to see other people. A person who is used may withhold generosity entirely. This is the original self-protection that calcifies into an entire worldview. So a quick example of this, maybe you are a teacher. Let's say you are a career teacher and your life experiences, which includes maybe some unprocessed traumatic experience, has wanted you not to be leaned on as a resource. Maybe you are a parentified or eldest daughter or something like that, where you see yourself as like you're at your wit's end of just feeling like a resource. You're tired of it. And now you are projecting this onto the innocent students or whomever you're called to serve. You may not be a teacher, but whomever you're called to serve, not realizing that this is a part of your developmental journey. And it's not the end of your journey. It is alignment unfolding. Okay. There was a time in my life where I used to be a volunteer for a school, and I would go out there outside of my work hours, even though it was something I would do in my job. But outside of my work hours, I would volunteer and sit with students and tutor them and mentor them. And when my job found out about it, what they did was they increased my hours. So it was, teaching me, the sacrifice led to the promotion. So as I continue to keep that mindset, all of those have led me to promotion in different areas. But while in those seasons, I was learning many different things. So sometimes our developmental assignments are not permanent identities, not sometimes, all the time, right? They're not permanent identities. They are unfolding mechanisms, right? Meaning that the role itself is not the destination. Where you are now is not your final destination. Even if you hate where you are, there is something for you to learn while you're there, okay? A person may become a teacher, not as their final form, but because of what you develop while you're there, right? As a teacher, you learn articulation, you learn patience, you learn stewardship, discernment, leadership, emotional regulation. You got to regulate that class. Responsibility towards others, embodiment of wisdom, right? The roles that we have pull out latent qualities inside of us. So if you reject the process because of fear of being used, you may unknowingly interrupt the plan that God has for you, the maturation process of the capacities that are inside of you trying to emerge through the experience. So we don't want to over-identify with the trauma experience, okay? The deeper tragedy is this. Sometimes not merely just suffering, right? But becoming so fused to the suffering that you resist environments that would develop the next layer of you. Growth is absolutely painful. I will not be dishonest with you about that. It is painful because it requires grieving all of the previous identities that once protected you. Healing is not just about releasing pain. It is also about releasing the attachment to the self-concept that was built around pain. Because if I stop being the overlooked one, if I stop being the misunderstood one, the martyr one, the one everyone's jealous of, the hyper-independent one, the one who's always needed, the one who never needs anyone, then who am I becoming? Development requires tolerating the in-between space where the old identity is dissolving before the fuller self is fully stabilized. So discernment is key always. And discernment is always going to ask, am I responding to the present moment or am I reacting to unfinished history? Where you are is necessary. Do not over-identify with your experiences. They are not you. They were there so that they could help develop, activate the qualities that God had already put inside of you. They're yours to walk through to the next season. God bless.